that's actually also why I think, again, XR comes into play. To give you a concrete example, we
Yep.
had that was like a couple of years ago. We had we want to do some like AI initiative or project with a customer, and we started, and then we were like, okay, now we need. It was about like deviation analysis. You have like
Okay.
a machine. You compare the state that it's in with the state it should be, and point out, okay, it's not safe to operate. It was not as advanced of what we talked about now, because AI what made a major advancements in the last two
Oh
years,
yeah,
but
it's made
that
some
was kind of the
major.
idea. Yeah, yeah, like
Yep.
to put it mildly. But and then we're like, okay, we need roughly 30 to 40 images of that asset, to train the model. They're like, what do you mean to train the model? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen automatically. How do you think
Yeah, it
these
doesn't
we
just
can
know.
no, yeah, exactly. Why would it? I mean, this is like maybe in the movies, but in the real world, it just doesn't know that. We need, and they're like, oh no, there's no way we cannot even that compliant or that sensitive data is confidential. We cannot even get that out of the and so on, and it kind of died down the whole thing,
Yep.
and or also like the capturing of it is like, well, they were like, well, do we have to go in there with a photo camera? And I walk around like, well, yeah, kinda. If you and it's actually what you just said, right? But with XR, you can also solve a bit the scalability and the training problem in a way that you can train while you look at it, right? That's actually also the
Yes.
really interesting thing. You can enhance these models by just feeding in the data that you see, and that's kind of how you
Yes.
build these models even in the first place for some of these things. Because as you said, right, realistically, these, especially for manufacturing, for all these types of work, that's not necessarily super well digitized in like
No, it's
spatial
not.
data in a database somewhere. It's like at
Even if
best you
it's
have a bunch of
digitized, the
PDFs.
spatial components,
Yeah,
are not. And even going
no,
back to
no,
one of the biggest gaps, and this is why I think it's going to be so helpful in this space, which is where the spatial component comes in, is you may have the CAD specs and you may have all this, but how it's designed in theory versus how it works in practice. I mean, and that's not just in manufacturing, that's just in real life. Like, oh,
yeah,
here's the model and what we're going to do. It's like, well, by the time we actually put it in, we actually had to make all these modifications. And then after 10 hours, it started doing this. So we had to do all this. And I think back to, you go back to it. That is part of why somebody who's been a specialist for 20, 30 years is so valuable,
hmm,
because they have all that context, and AI
yeah,
doesn't have
yeah,
context. And spatial is what gives things context, which a static image, I mean, even I think about a static image is not the best for training AI on
no.
context, because it's like, well, it doesn't understand the environment. It doesn't understand what's around it and how all these things work, versus capturing all that real time data of all of this. You're actually starting to give it context in new and different ways than it's ever had before.
Exactly. That's the key word. The context is that's the word. I think that's really
It
like the
matters.
it matters. And I really think or of course you can technically walk around with your phone, but that's not how you use your phone. I really think headset and XR then is really the way that this is natural, right? You don't even feel it. You don't even see it, just happens automatically. And that's where you can really solve that problem, right? You can give, because again, back to the chat GPT text, there's no context, right? Or I need to give all the context. I need to describe everything. I mean, there's already people who like have, okay, prompt engineering. How do you do that? Which there's value in that, obviously, right? You need to understand how to ask questions. But what if you
But a
actually would
lot
have
of
to do
that
that?
prompt engineering, well, exactly, because a lot of that prompt engineering is giving it the context it needs,
Yes,
that it
yes,
could get just from the environment. But
yes,
because it doesn't have, like you said, I think you said in the beginning,
yeah,
AI and XR merging is giving AI eyes and ears,
yes,
which
exactly.
is huge in giving it context, because it can start to see and hear and experience things, and it couldn't before. And
Yeah,
it's just very difficult
yeah.
without that.